As I crept towards my mom's lab door, my palms became clammy and beads of sweat formed on my brow. My hands clenched the door and I pushed it open inch by inch until the space was wide enough for me to slide into the lab. My eyes bulged and my jaw dropped when I saw it there. She was my baby sister in a large standing tube which was being filled with liquid. "Mom!" I screamed hysterically as I rushed towards my sister. "What are you doing?" Mom turned towards me with a weathered look on her face. "What I should have done a long time ago. I want my daughter back, and this is the only way I know how." You are probably wondering how things could have escalated to this point, so I'll start at the beginning, but before I do, let me introduce myself. Hi, I'm Amanda. If you're new here, welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our amazing channel. Tap that notification bell so you will know when new content is posted. Okay, back to my story. As hard as it may seem, I had a pretty amazing life before my encounter with Mom in her lab. Mom and Dad are both scientists, and after I was born, they decided to branch out on their own and work from home. My parents were always there when I needed them, and being an only child, I loved the fact that I had my parents all to myself. Even though I got many things I wanted, Mom and Dad made sure that I was responsible and respectful to everyone. When Mama announced that she was pregnant, I was 12 at the time. I was sort of sad to know that I had to share my parents, but I was also excited to have someone to play with. After my mom's first ultrasound, we found out that she was having twin girls. Isn't that exciting? 2 siblings to play with. I couldn't wait to meet them. That night at home, we celebrated. The next day, my parents and I began to prepare for the new members of our family. The months flew by, and as the days drew closer to birth, I was so excited that many nights I lay awake thinking about all the cool things I would teach my baby sisters. Finally, the day arrived when Mom was rushed to the hospital. Dad and I waited in the waiting area nervously as the minutes turned to hours. After a few hours, a doctor came to the waiting area and asked to speak with my dad. "Is everything okay, Doc? Your wife and one of your daughters are resting comfortably." I squeezed my dad's hand, knowing that the doctor was about to share the bad news. The doctor sighed heavily. "Some complications arose during birth, and your daughter has been rushed to the ICU. Is she going to be okay?" "We're doing everything that we can. In about 30 minutes, you'll be able to check in on your wife and daughter." The doctor walked away, and Dad and I sat in the waiting room until it was time to see Mom and the baby. As the nurse escorted us to the room, I looked up. My dad seemed to have a blank expression on his face that slowly changed into one of joy. When we entered the room, my eyes lit up when I saw the teeny tiny baby cuddled in my mom's arms. Mom and Dad named her Faith, and my other sister, Hope. While Mom and Dad spoke, I was fascinated by her 10 tiny fingers and her 10 tiny toes. I guess it was at that moment I decided that as a big sister, it was my duty to protect my little sisters. I couldn't wait to meet Hope. That, however, never came to pass. The next 2 weeks were devastating. Hope never made it past the ICU, and only my parents were allowed to see her. Mom showed me a picture of Hope, and that night I remember bawling my eyes out and praying that she would be okay. But it wasn't meant to be. She passed away a few days later. When Mom and Faith were released, my parents organized a farewell service. From that day on, my family was not the same. The days following Hope's death was an adjustment for everyone. At 13, I understood that Mom needed to take care of the baby, but I was also hurt that Mom never found time to do anything with me anymore. It had been 9 months since Faith had been home, and Mom still acted like she was a newborn. Over the past few months, tensions grew between Mom and Dad, and they had been arguing a lot. It wasn't like them, and every time I asked Dad about it, he smiled and said everything was going to be okay, and that sometimes parents argue. The thing was, my parents never argued before, and I didn't think that things were going to get better. One afternoon, I found Dad sitting at the kitchen table with his fingers wrapped around a cup of coffee, gazing into the distance. "Dad, is everything okay?" Dad plastered a fake smile on his face and turned to me. "Hey, Pumpkin, I'm fine. Just working on something in the new lab." I didn't believe Dad. The way my life has changed drastically over the past few months, I knew that things were about to get much worse before it became better. The much worse came later on in the week when Dad told me that he was moving out. He gave me a phone and told me to call him if I needed him. I hugged him tightly and begged him to stay. He said that he needed time away to figure things out, but he would come and visit Faith and I as often as he could. With Dad gone, Mom became obsessed with a secret project that she was working on in her lab. I was no longer allowed to enter the lab. Anything Mom wanted needed to be placed by the door. Without Dad, I stepped up to become Faith's other parent. Since days would pass without Mom coming out of the lab, the only times Mom did come out of the lab was to take blood samples from Faith, which I found to be very suspicious. What could Mom be working on that she needed Faith's blood? After a few days of Mom taking blood samples, I called Dad and told him what was going on. He had not been able to visit us as often as he wanted because he had gotten a new contract. I thought that calling him would fix things, but I definitely made things worse. When Dad got to the house, he opened the lab door with his key and confronted Mom about what I told him. I held Faith as I listened to what he was saying by the door of the lab. He told Mom that if she did not stop her madness and started treating us right, that he was going to file for custody of his kids. After that, Mom and Dad's arguments were harsh whispers, and I couldn't make out what they were saying. I didn't want to leave Mom, but I wanted Dad to spend more time with us. I read somewhere that some women have postpartum depression after birth, and Mom also lost a daughter, which made things worse for her. I didn't want Mom to lose faith in me, but I also became afraid of what Mom was doing to Faith. That night, Dad spent the night, but he left early the next morning. The next 2 weeks, things seemed to be looking up. Mom and I actually started talking again, and things seemed to be turning around for the better. But boy, I was wrong. I woke up one morning to an extremely quiet house. After looking throughout the house, I realized that both Mom and Faith were in the lab. I turned the knob on the door of the lab, and my heart stopped when I realized it was locked. What could a 13-year-old do? If I called Dad, he would take away Faith and I. If I called the police, they would take away Mom. If we stayed, I'm not sure what kind of experiments Mom would continue on Faith. I was confused and overwhelmed, so I did absolutely nothing and hoped that Mom and Faith would come out of the lab soon. Over the next few days, I hardly saw Mom or Faith. I felt as though something was slowly crushing my breath. I had never felt so alone in my life. I weighed my options once more and realized that I needed to help Faith. I remembered my promise to my sisters to protect them no matter what. Even if it was from Mom, I needed to get into the lab, so I had to wait for Mom. The next few hours, I lurked around the lab door like a fat kid lurking around desserts. Finally, I heard the lab door open. I pressed against the wall of the hiding spot as Mom peeked out of the lab before she scurried to the kitchen. I bolted towards the lab door and placed a rubber doorstep at the bottom of the door. Just as I was about to enter, I heard Mom coming back, and I dove into my hiding place and waited. As soon as Mom entered the lab, I knew I needed to move swiftly. It was now or never. As I crept toward Mom's lab door, my palms became clammy and beads of sweat formed on my forehead. My hands clenched the door handle as I pushed open the door inch by inch until I was able to slide into the lab. My eyes bulged and my jaw dropped when I saw it. There was my baby sister in a large standing, being filled with liquid. "Mom!" I screamed hysterically as I rushed toward my sister. "What are you doing?" Mom turned to me with a weathered look on her face. "What I should have done a long time ago. I want my daughter back, and this is the only way I know how." "If you don't stop, I'm going to call Dad." I yelled as I backed up towards the door. Before I knew what was happening, Mom attacked me and was trying to tie me to her metal lab table with one of her plastic tubes. As I looked at Faith in the tube, I knew it wouldn't be long before the two were completely filled. I had to think quickly. I looked towards the door and yelled at Dad. That was all it took for Mom to be distracted. I used those 2 seconds to kick hard at Mom's face. She stumbled backwards and fell against a cabinet against the wall. I scrambled to my feet and ran towards the machine. I slammed my hands on every button until the tubes opened. "No!" Mom screeched behind me. I grabbed Faith as Mom slid in, who was trying to get to us. I was barely able to make it out of the lab. I grabbed my phone on the kitchen counter and bolted out the kitchen door. After a few minutes of running, I found a group of abandoned houses and called Dad. I told him what happened. He told me to stay where I was and that he was on his way. I had never been so scared in my life. When Dad found us, I was still shaking, and I threw my arms around his neck and cried. That night, we spent it at Dad's, but I wasn't able to sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mom's face contorted in anger as she launched herself at me. I thought that maybe if I drank some warm milk, I would be able to sleep. That decision changed my life forever. As I was about to turn on the light, I noticed Dad was walking out of his lab. Why was Dad up so late? I wondered. I snuck into the lab to see what Dad was working on, and what my eyes gazed upon shook me to my very core. As I surveyed the lab, my eyes grew wide as I couldn't believe what I saw. There were many versions of Faith in tubes, as well as many versions of myself. I walked closer and noticed that the tuple versions were deformed. I glimpsed a file on the desk and searched through the file in my dad's handwriting. His notes read, "Subjects 124 and 165 are safe at my home." I continued reading through the file. On the day that my mom and Faith were discharged from the hospital, our family got into a car accident. A drunk driver ran the red light, and Faith and I were killed. All this time, the testing secrecy, both Mom and Dad were working on it together. "Amanda?" Dad's voice came from behind me. How could I face him? Was I just a test subject to him? Did he even see me as his daughter? I felt his arm squeeze my shoulders gently as tears streamed down my face. "You weren't supposed to see that." He turned me around to face him and hugged me tightly. Next, he walked us to the kitchen where he sat facing me as he tried to explain what I just saw. Dad said, after losing Faith, they couldn't bear to lose their other children as well. He continued by saying they were successfully able to clone me and Faith. However, they were never able to successfully clone Hope. Dad said he tried to get Mom to stop, but she refused to give up on Hope. But how do I still have memories? And why aren't there any crashes? Well, your mom and I didn't want you to have memories of the crash, so we removed those and added memories to Hope's funeral. Those were the only memories that were altered. So what now? Well, now you go to bed and figure out the rest tomorrow. As I sat in bed, I couldn't wrap my head around everything. Dad just confessed to me. Now that I know he is going to wipe my memories of me finding out, should I run away or should I hope for the best? What would you do if you found out you were a clone? Leave your answers in the comments.
Hello everyone, my name is Diana, and today I will tell you about my really unusual and famous neighbors. I promise that this information will be truly interesting and special. Don't get me wrong, this is not gossip and intrigues of evil tongues. The thing is that there are so many comic situations in our neighborhood that it is just impossible to keep silent about them. So, my parents and I live in an elite village which is under protection. Actually, we have never had famous neighbors. We all knew each other and even communicated quite well with one another. Of course, many residents come here just for the weekend or for the summer, and there are not many people who live here during the whole year like us. In fact, we were the first ones to settle here, so we knew the names of all the neighbors. It was very interesting to watch how new people, new faces, and new stories started to appear. Yes, you heard right. Sometimes different kinds of stories started spreading in our village. Some neighbors tell different rumors about others apparently out of boredom. That's how it happened this time as well. Our family heard rumors that the president himself, together with his family, had settled into the White Mansion. I mean, think of it. The president of our country. Can you believe it? Well, at first, we did not believe it either. Frankly, the new neighbors were somehow weird and withdrawn. We never imagined to free them. However, around their house, there was always activity. Black Jeeps with tinted windows were driving up and off almost around the clock. It was clear that not any ordinary millionaires settled there. Well, it happens some people don't want to talk with others, or they just come here to enjoy peace and quiet. They have the right to do that. We will not force them to be our friends or spy using a drone to check out who lives there. Although, why not? One morning I woke up and heard lively music. Probably everyone in the world could hear it. The song seemed to be heard everywhere, as if someone had installed dozens of loudspeakers around the entire perimeter of our house and turned them on to full capacity. I jumped out of my bed and rushed to look for the source of the sound. Did Dad decide to play a trick on me in such a way? I thought. But no, the music was heard not from our house, but from the White Mansion with the mysterious owners. It was extremely interesting to see who was having so much fun there, and I decided to come closer, hoping to see something interesting. I climbed onto a huge rock, and from it I looked inside through a small hole. I was shocked because there in the courtyard of the mansion, the president himself was dancing to that song. Can you imagine? I could not believe my eyes. No, of course, I always knew that he was a cheerful person, because this was told from all the screens of the country. But I couldn't even think that he would turn out to be so funny. That's quite a twist. I rushed into the house and told my parents about what I saw from behind the high fence. They called me a fibber and even laughed at me. This made me very angry, and I suggested that they go and look into the hole themselves. They refused and then said that I had to bring them evidence. So, after that, I began to approach the fence of the president's house as if it was my job. I was armed with night vision device and a camera. I managed to find out that our famous neighbor comes here several times a month, and sometimes his children and grandchildren visit this place as well. I learned so many interesting things about Mr. President. For example, he has a terrible sweet tooth. Do you think I'm talking about 1 or 2 ice creams and a bar of chocolate? In fact, he eats a plate of donuts, even for breakfast. Then during the day, he walks around the yard with bars of chocolate and chews on them greedily. He even prefers sandwiches with chocolate cream instead of meat, unlike other members of his family. I even managed to take a photo in which Mr. President secretly stole a scoop of ice cream from his son and ate it when the kid discovered the missing ice cream. His father just shrugged. I wonder if he believed his dad. Soon, I had a lot of photos proving that the president was our neighbor, so I decided to show them to my parents. They were very mad at me and ordered me to stop doing stupid things immediately. They also said that no one actually gave me the right to interfere in the lives of others. They strictly forbade me from approaching the house. Of course, they were right, but I was used to spying on him so much that I was not ready to give up my hobby immediately. So, secretly from my parents, I continued visiting my place near the fence. Once, early in the morning, someone knocked on our door. At that time, my parents were somewhere in the backyard, and they didn't hear it, so I answered the door in front of me. There was a man dressed in black. He had a huge hood on his head. The collar of his sweater was raised very high, and he had a funny, thick mustache on his face. I immediately recognized him by his voice. It was the president, but why did he need to masquerade? He asked me to give him scissors and promised to return them soon. Of course, I couldn't refuse him. But I was really curious, why did he need scissors so early in the morning? Do you know what I decided to do next? Yes, I went to the fence to my secret hiding place. It turned out that Mr. President decided to entertain his grandchildren, and one by one, they were blindfolded. They started to cut the ropes on which they were hanging balls. This is a very fun game. They all looked so happy that I really wanted to join them. It's a pity that I didn't have such a cool grandpa, or rather, I don't have any grandpa at all. I envied the grandchildren of the president so much. They were fooling around on the lawn some more, and then apparently the nanny took the children away. They went to the swimming pool. Shortly after that, the president shouted, "Woo! Freedom!" and started jumping around the territory of his yard. He was playing an Indian, a cowboy, and even a gangster. He's so funny and weird. Who would have thought that such a person ruled our country? Then I was roughly grabbed by the scruff of my neck and pulled down from my stone. A huge musclehead who was over 2 meters high and wide was holding me in his hand. He looked exactly like a wardrobe. Out of fear, I lost my speech and hearing because I did not hear what he was telling me. However, a bottle of water was poured on my head. I came to my senses. This wardrobe, along with 2 of his comrades of the same size, asked who I was and what I was doing there. They forced me to turn my pockets inside out, tell them what I was seeing, and who I told about it. I still couldn't answer anything because I was just scared. If necessary, any of them could have easily crushed me between 2 fingers, just like a mosquito. It was a real nightmare. Then they told someone about me on the radio, and that person ordered them to bring me in. I started crying and asked them to let me go. I promised that I would never tell anyone anything and asked for them to just let me go. I closed my eyes and began to say goodbye to everyone while they were dragging me somewhere. When I opened my eyes, the president was in front of me. He asked the musclehead why they had behaved in such a rude manner with a child and ordered them to be more courteous and loyal next time. And then he asked me who he was. In fact, Lychee was my dog. I had picked him up on the road 2 years ago, and since then, we've been best friends. But how does the president know my dog's name? It turned out when they were dragging me to him, I was screaming loudly, "Lychee, goodbye! I hope my parents will take care of you." But the president found it funny, not embarrassing. Okay, you may laugh at me. Just don't kill me, I thought. But it turned out I actually said it out loud. Then the neighbor asked me why I thought I was in danger. He said that his goal was to talk to me, and in no case to scare me or do me any harm. By the way, here are your scissors. You can take them back, he said. When I took them back, he immediately let me go. All in all, we did not manage to have a dialogue because I could not overcome my fear. Only now I understand that I needed to pull myself together and talk with him because I don't get chances like that every day. With my shaking legs, I went home and locked myself up in my room. I needed some time to digest everything that had just happened. Anyway, the president was very friendly and kind towards me, so it didn't take very long to get rid of my stress. But still, I decided to cover my tracks and deleted all the photos and videos taken through the hole in the fence. It's only fair, and I feel calmer this way. Of course, I stopped going there and spying on the president. However, in the mornings, I often hear the familiar song that he sings, and with a smile on my face, I imagine how a famous neighbor is dancing to the music. Recently, my dad said that our family received an invitation to dinner from the owner of that house. I asked if he recognized him, and in response, my dad put a finger on his lips and said, it looks like he knew who lived there and just did not want to provoke his teenage daughter to engage in espionage. After all, he is the one who perfectly knows my character and my love for investigations. By the way, to be honest, no matter how I tried during almost 2 months of observation, I was not able to find out anything bad about the president. How would you take advantage of such a neighborhood? Share your answers in the comments, and I will probably use some of them. Be sure to click on the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel.